They were young, fearless, and unstoppable, destined to conquer Europe. But on a snow-covered runway in Munich, their dreams went up in flames. This is the story of the day Manchester United fell from the sky, and how the spirit of a broken team became immortal. It was February 6, 1958, a bitter gray afternoon in Munich, Germany. The wind howled across the tarmac at Munich Riem Airport, carrying fine needles of snow that stung the skin. Inside the British European Airways, Flight 609 sat the pride of England, the Busby Babes, Manchester United's golden generation. They were returning from Belgrade after securing a thrilling 3-3 draw against Red Star, enough to take them into the European Cup semi-finals. The atmosphere in the cabin was a mix of relief and celebration. Some players laughed, swapping stories and teasing each other. Others dozed against the window, tired but content. Sir Matt Busby's vision had come to life, a team built on youth, skill, and courage. The average age was just 22. They had style, they had swagger, and they played with a joy that made English football believe in beauty again. At the heart of it all was Duncan Edwards, just 21, but already considered one of the greatest players the world had ever seen. Bobby Charlton later said that Duncan made everything look easy, a player so strong and graceful that he could have played in any position on the pitch. Many believed he was destined to captain England. Beside him were stars like Tommy Taylor, the prolific striker who'd scored 112 goals for United; Roger Byrne, the calm, authoritative captain; Eddie Coleman, the impish midfielder with lightning feet; and David Pegg, the left winger who played like he was dancing. The plane made a scheduled stop in Munich to refuel. Snow continued to fall heavily. It wasn't ideal flying weather, but the pilots, Captain James Thane and Captain Kenneth Raymond, were experienced men. Still, something didn't feel right. Twice they attempted takeoff, and twice they had to abort because of engine surging. The passengers grew restless. Some joked nervously. Others sat in silence, staring through the frosted windows. There's a lesser-known story about Harry Gregg, United's goalkeeper. He later recalled that before the third takeoff attempt, he noticed his teammate Bill Folks reading a newspaper, completely calm. Gregg leaned over and muttered, "If we crash this time, that'll be the end of us." Folks replied, "Aye, maybe." Seconds later, the engines roared again. At 3:04 p.m., the aircraft thundered down the runway. Snow and slush sprayed against the fuselage. The engines struggled, the speed wasn't enough, and before anyone could react, the plane skidded, clipped the fence at the runway's end, and tore through a nearby house before exploding into a fireball. The sound echoed across the airport, metal shrieking, glass shattering, fire crackling through the snow. Within seconds, silence fell again, broken only by the faint cries of the injured. Harry Gregg regained consciousness, blood on his face, smoke in his lungs. In shock, but determined, he tore off his seatbelt. He began pulling survivors from the wreckage. First Bobby Charlton and Dennis Violet, then manager Matt Busby, and even Vera Lukic, the pregnant wife of a Yugoslav diplomat, and her young daughter. Amid the chaos, Gregg became the hero of Munich, though he never saw himself that way. He said, "I was doing what anyone should do." 23 people died that day. 8 of them were Manchester United players: Roger Byrne, Eddie Coleman, Mark Jones, David Pegg, Tommy Taylor, Billy Whelan, Jeff Bent, and Duncan Edwards, who survived the crash but succumbed to his injuries 15 days later in a Munich hospital. Nurses said he kept asking, "What time's kickoff?" Another untold moment. As Duncan lay dying, Sir Matt Busby, gravely injured in the same hospital, was kept unaware of who had survived. When he finally awoke, he asked, "How are the lads?" Jimmy Murphy, his loyal assistant, could only whisper, "They're gone, Matt. They're gone." Busby was broken. He told his wife, "I don't want to go on." But she looked him in the eye and said, "You must live for them." Back in Manchester, grief spread like a shadow. The city fell silent. Thousands lined the streets outside Old Trafford, laying flowers and scarves at the gates. The club's offices were flooded with letters from all over the world, from fans, rivals, and even from Real Madrid, who offered players to help United finish the season. Incredibly, just 13 days later, United fielded a makeshift team for the FA Cup tie against Sheffield Wednesday. Led by Jimmy Murphy, who hadn't traveled to Munich because he was managing Wales, they walked out to thunderous applause. The patchwork side won 3-0. It wasn't about football anymore. It was about defiance, about proving that Manchester United would not die in the snow of Munich. The next few years were a story of resurrection. Sir Matt Busby returned to management, scarred but unbroken. He rebuilt, signing players like Dennis Law and discovering a teenage genius from Belfast named George Best. Bobby Charlton, one of the Munich survivors, carried the memories of his fallen teammates with quiet dignity. In 1968, exactly 10 years after the crash, Manchester United did what those lost boys had dreamed of. They lifted the European Cup at Wembley, defeating Benfica 4-1. As Charlton lifted the trophy beside Busby, the tears flowed freely. The circle had been completed. Busby later said, "It was the fulfillment of my dreams and of theirs." Today, at Old Trafford, a clock stands frozen at 3:04, the time of the crash. Beneath it each year, thousands gather in silence. There are no chants, no noise, only remembrance. The names of the lost are read aloud, and for a moment, time stands still. Because the Busby Babes weren't just footballers, they were symbols of youth, courage, and hope. Their story reminds us that tragedy can destroy, but it can also inspire generations to rise again. Manchester United didn't die that day in Munich. They were reborn in the snow, their spirit living on in every red shirt, every chant, every dream that refuses to die. What does the story of the Busby Babes mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your reflections on how this tragedy shaped Manchester United and football itself.